Part 143. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1426. Tiger Cat Yug jumped up. The cat's eyes widened, its tail stood straight up, its front paws and back paws, and all its nails popped out coldly. I'll catch it? I'll catch it? I'll catch you. Cats are animals that are extremely sensitive to sound, let alone a sudden loud noise in a dark and claustrophobic environment. Although I was given earplugs before, Yuge found them uncomfortable and had already shaken them off. Scared the cat to death. Let me out. Let me out. Hey, don't catch me. Gretel yelled through the MRI machine. It's terrible, it's terrible. This is the work of the teacher and several elven elders in the alchemy field. It's the only one in the world. If he is caught, even if he has the nerve to go to the teacher to rub it again, his face will be shaved off. Whistle. Whistle. The inside of the NMR machine kept ringing. The claws of a high-level tiger cat are comparable to the top magic weapons. If they want to break gold and crack rocks, there will be no problem at all. If the Lord of Thunder hadn't been very experienced and had taken defense issues into consideration when building this machine would have been scratched into pieces. Even so, the whole cabin was sizzling, 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 and the sound was so loud that it made people's teeth. Get it under control. Greet yelled a second time. During an MRI, no matter how uncomfortable it is, most people will try to stay still. If they really can't, the doctor can only wait a while before scanning the next part. When encountering young children, babies, etc. who cannot communicate or keep quiet, in most cases, you can only wait for them to fall asleep, or simply anesthetize them. In a few cases, medical staff will lie down in the scanning cabin and manually control the child. But now, Gretel couldn't spray anesthetic gas into the cabin, and he couldn't rush in and grab its claws. The force value was there, and he didn't want to be scratched to pieces instead of the nuclear magnetic machine. As the conductor of the experiment and the leader of the entire project, Gretel will never let himself stand under a dangerous wall. Instead, he took a step back and shouted again. Get it under control. The breeze blows, the curtains are rolled up, and another faint fragrance of flowers floats into the room. The sound of scratching against the wall in the cabin slowed down slightly and then continued to roar. Obviously, Margotha's floral fragrance works well when used before problems arise. However, it is still not enough to appease the already violent monsters. Beside Greet, Kusa Oak took a step forward and used his body to block the gap between Greet and the nuclear magnetic machine. Press the start button with one hand, lean back slightly, and turn your head sideways. Do you want to turn off the phone? No. Gretel was extremely determined. Are you kidding? Now that the water from the well of eternity has begun to take effect, the changes in Tiger Cat Yug have begun. At this time, the records of every minute and every second are precious. Shut down? Shut down the phone at this time and allow all changes in the Tiger Cat to occur without any monitoring or recording. He is not a philanthropist. I spent my own money in exchange for such precious well water, and came to treat unrelated monsters to drink. Before he finished speaking, Idion had already rushed over. 1 step, 2 steps, and he was about to make a leap. He opened the hatch cover, rushed in and held it down. There were 2 whizzing sounds from behind, and 2 thin and long things came through the window. Idion leaned aside urgently and got out of the way in time. 2 long vines as thick as fingers penetrated straight into the measurement cabin. As soon as they moved for some unknown reason, the tiger cat Yuge screamed, and the sound in the measurement cabin stopped. Gretel breathed a huge sigh of relief. Thank God. Luckily he took the fruit of the exploding ancient tree and ran around, inviting legendary magic flowers and legendary magic vines. The control power of the legendary demon vine Varido is really powerful. As soon as the two vines were stretched out, the tiger cat was directly controlled. It stretched in mid-air. He quickly stepped forward and took a look. Two rattan rods were seen, one penetrating from the front end of the measurement cabin and the other penetrating from the rear end, binding the tiger cat's front and rear feet respectively. With a tug at both ends, the tiger cat was pulled straight up and stretched tightly in the air. Pity that level 15 tiger cat. Under the physical control of the legendary level magic vine, it can be rounded when it wants to be, flattened when it wants to be, or pulled into a kite but not into a line. For a while, even the cry became weaker. From the fierce meow and meow, it soon became a little whisper, my hoo, my hoo. If it were another cat slave, he would have rushed to save the cat. However, Greet was so hard-hearted that he stood in the laboratory with his hands behind his back, his eyes closed tightly, trying to use his mental power to explore the situation of the tiger cat. Well, the muscles were broken, started to grow again, broke again, and grew again, and the bones were also broken, so miserable. If it is tied up like this and cannot struggle, will it hinder its advancement? Regardless of whether there is any hindrance, Gretel will not let it go at this time. When we arrived, we had already negotiated the conditions, and it was clearly stated in the informed consent form that the price for taking the well water advanced is to cooperate with the examination. If you are disobedient, jump around, or destroy the equipment, you will have to be tied up. If you want to withdraw from the experimental group now, it's too late. The tiger cat struggled in the nuclear magnetic machine for 3 days and 3 nights, and the nuclear magnetic machine buzzed for 3 days and 3 nights, the machine almost overheated and burned. Fortunately, everything went well and the advancement was successful. Greet gave it another full body scan and took the sample. After taking the sample, Yug couldn't wait to rush into the jungle, jumping over 5 big trees before he stopped, turned around and cursed. Meow 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 dash. Ah, I don't understand. Gretel shrugged confidently. Look, you're so angry that you're swearing in cat language. How can I understand you if you don't speak human language? Then again, the loud start-up sound of the MRI machine and the loud sound during the scan are indeed a problem. In the past, those demonic pigs that were scanned were all knocked unconscious or controlled with magic. Your Highness, the Great Prince, who has been in a coma for thousands of years and relies on seals to maintain his vital signs, will not complain that this thing is too loud. Now, it's the turn of the lively warcraft, especially the warcraft that are about to advance, and this has become a big problem. Replace their earplugs with silent ones. Or, just cast one soundproofing spell each. Will it affect the detection effect? Forget it, make both plans first, and arrange for volunteers to go in and give it a try. New problems are being solved here, and on the other side, the tower spirit is rumbling and rumbling, calculating at full strength. Nuclear magnetic resonance involves a huge amount of calculations, not to mention that Greet scanned it for 3 days at a time, so it would take a longer period of calculation to get the results. On the other side, the chromosomal changes before and after the tiger cat's advancement can only be calculated with the help of oak sticks, banging, and dying. Scan for 3 days, count for 3 days. Finally, Gretel sat in front of the experimental table, facing the constantly changing images, and narrowed his eyes. Well, comparing the chromosomes before and after, there are indeed changes in the points. As for whether these changes will lead to the loss of advancement potential, it is difficult to say. More research is needed, and many factors need to be eliminated. Muscles, ligaments, and bones are constantly torn and healed. There are many calcifications in muscles and ligaments, nodules appear in the chest, and poor bone healing. If we could use mental power to guide the healing process carefully and avoid leaving hidden wounds, wouldn't it be possible to advance even further? With such doubts, Gretel went to find Elder Ahmet and Elder Fahim. The two legends listened to his questions and assumptions, carefully read the records of their predecessors, and answered uncertainly. This is not a direction that no one has tried before. With the legendary level of mental power, you can finally perceive the situation of the advanced person and guide the treatment in a targeted manner. However, whether it can achieve the accuracy you require, or whether it can achieve the accuracy that can be sensed by scanning, in short, you give it a try. You can't try it right away. NMR instruments are currently not capable of instant scanning and instant results, and they can also produce three-dimensional simulation results. Gretel had to trouble the Lord of Thunder again. "Teacher, you're causing trouble for me again." The Lord of Thunder sat upright in front of the experimental table and sighed. Magnetic oscillation, what is the principle of magnetic oscillation? He still doesn't have a clue, and he can't even find the research direction. Even so, taking over Gretel's subject was not easy. Formulas need to be updated, calculation methods need to be updated, computing power needs to be increased, everything needs to be adjusted, and I don't know how much adjustment will be the end. Greet, please go and ask if there are any ancient trees of wisdom that can participate in the project. The computing power of the tower spirit alone is not enough. No problem. Teacher, I'll ask right away. Isn't it just brushing my face? If I don't brush my face, I can also brush the leaves of the world tree. All the ancient trees love me, naturally they all love me. It's perfectly fine to abduct an ancient tree and come over to work. The Lord of Thunder is responsible for upgrading the nuclear magnetic machine, and Greet is responsible for other aspects of research, such as sound isolating headphones and whether sound isolating headphones affect nuclear magnetic resonance detection. After being busy for quite some time, the second round of research started again. This time, Gretel launched a comparative experiment. Two albatross of the same rank and similar weight, one first and one second, drank the same amount of water from the well of eternity. One, with Elder Fahim sitting next to him, simply using his mental power to explore the injury and guide it to heal. The other one, with Greet sitting next to it, stared at the MRI machine, following the position suggested by the scanned image, using mental power to guide the injury to heal. 3, 2, 1. Start. Thin beads of sweat soon seeped out from Greet's forehead. During the advancement process, it is not one place that is expanding, twisting, or tearing, but 2, 5, 10, different places. Multi-line operation is too troublesome. Too tired. This is simply not a job for humans, help. It's the penultimate day. Cat wants votes. Cat has been updated for 23 consecutive days this month. We will continue to update for 62 consecutive days in the future. You need tickets to be used as a mattress to have a good sleep. Everyone, take a look at the remaining tickets in the ticket folder and give them to the cat quickly. Thanks to Ed for the 1,500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1427. Treatment guided by legend. Compared with natural healing, the occurrence rate of muscle fiber induration is reduced by 75%, calcification is reduced by 50%, and abnormal bone healing is reduced by 15%. Treatment guided by legends. Compared with ordinary healers guided by magnetic field resonance, the occurrence rate of muscle fiber induration is reduced by 25%, and calcification is reduced by 15%. Oh, I'm so bad. Gretel sighed and threw himself down in front of the experimental table. The gap in hard power is there, and it's hard not to accept it. He looked at the MRI images for treatment, but both the efficiency and the final results were far behind the legendary master's direct treatment with mental power. The gap from level 14 to level 19 is already very far, let alone from half-step legend to legend. That distance is almost an essential leap, almost further than the distance from level 14 to level 19. Don't be like this, little Gretel. Elder Fahim smiled and patted him. This plan is already very good. We are also learning to interpret magnetic resonance. Once we understand it and follow its guidelines for treatment, the effect should be better. Alas, it is really difficult to interpret this thing. It can be seen that little Gretel is already working hard to optimize and reduce the difficulty of interpretation. He even stacked the original pictures one by one, made them three-dimensional, and asked the computing center to display the human form. At this stage, we are comparing data and further optimizing calculations, hoping to display the fracture location in real time. This is quite difficult considering that the subjects are constantly struggling and rolling, and their heartbeat, breathing, intestinal motility, etc. are not stopping, and it is even difficult to hold their breath as required. Little Greet, look. For us old men, there is no difference in the effect if we follow the instructions of the magnetic resonance scan to guide the treatment, compared to directly using mental power to scan. Elder Fahim handed over a statistical sheet. There is no difference in the occurrence rate of induration, calcification points, and abnormal bone healing. And the key is that relying on magnetic resonance scanning can greatly save mental energy, and several people can operate together. 3 days and 3 nights? Even if you are a legend, working hard for 3 days and 3 nights without blinking an eye and operating with high intensity and precision will still make you tired. There is something to help you with instructions. It saves you a lot of effort. Not to mention, everyone can divide it up. One person is responsible for the arms, one person is responsible for the legs, and one person is responsible for the torso. If there is something to help give instructions, the possibility of mental collision with each other will be much smaller. Greet breathed a sigh of relief. If you can help, that's good. If you can help, there is room for improvement. I just don't know if this method is effective in unlocking the chain leading to the legend. That's right. The next test. Albatross number 1, Albatross number 2, Albatross number 3. That's Aisha, Sjoerd, Olsen, and Fuki. Idian looked at him helplessly, with a look on his face that by the time you remember, it will be too late. I have taken him out for testing. Aisha, the one who healed naturally, is not as good as the others in terms of agility, strength, reaction speed, and cardiopulmonary function. He lowered his head and flipped through the record book in his hand. Sjoerd and Fuki are the two who were guided by the legend and have the best results. It can be seen that slight defects in healing and problems in the body can indeed affect the strength. As for advancing to legend, Sjoerd and Fuki, I specially brought them over and asked Harold to make a prophecy. Elder Amat's voice was gentle and slow, with a hint of fatigue. Harold said that the upper limit of the two of them has been locked, and they will never be able to cross that step again in this life. As for relying on this method to advance, why you can't step into the legend, there have always been many speculations. Some people think that advancing to legend is too difficult, relying on external forces to make tricks, losing the understanding of every step on the way, and being unable to cross the last step. Some people think that if you go from a high-level junior level to a half-step legend in one go, the foundation is unstable and it will be difficult to move forward. Some people think that this is a price and a curse. The sweetest fruits will only fall into the hands of the most diligent warriors. The results of the chromosome comparison are also out. Gretel took a deep breath, faced the legends, and made a gesture. An oak stick poked out a branch from the window, with a crystal clear fruit the size of a grapefruit hanging on it, spinning gracefully on the branch. For a moment, the light shined brightly, and pictures were drawn out in front of everyone. Using the well water from the well of eternity to advance, before and after the advancement, it can be seen from the comparison of the chromosomes that there is a certain disorder in the points. He highlighted those golden points, especially those that were dyed golden before advancing. Whether it is the tiger cat yug or the 4 albatross, the chromosome points are misaligned by about 1,000th. As for the golden part, the misaligned parts are even more. I initially suspected that it was because the too strong energy infusion affected the process of cell division and chromosome breakage and reorganization. Several legends, especially Grand Elder Amat and Elder Fahim, the two spellcasters looked at the comparison pictures carefully without blinking. Different from the chromosomes of fruit flies, whether it is a tiger cat or an albatross, the chromosomes are densely packed and extremely complicated, which is 10 times more troublesome than a ball of wool that has been scratched by a cat. However, the two elders looked at it with great concentration, not too complicated or confusing at all. At this point, Gretel feels ashamed. Gretel only glanced at the mess, then ordered the oak staff to work hard to mark and count all the abnormal points for me. Let him open his eyes wide and play the game of let's find fault. No way. However, in the process of advancing to legend, there will be drastic changes. Elder Fahim asked the question hesitantly. Gretel slowly shook his head and made another gesture. The oak staff stretched out the second branch and the third branch. A large number of images were once again projected into the fruits of the branches. This is a comparison of Udian's chromosomes before and after his advancement. This is a comparison of senior brother Baebo's chromosomes before and after his advancement. This is a comparison of my own chromosomes at grade 13 and grade 14. It can be seen that through hard training and normal advancement, the golden part on the chromosome will be stretched, but the chromosome strip itself will not be disordered. Here are young students in the Magic Academy. Comparing the previous advancements before and after, we can reach the same conclusion. Don't worry, I obtained their informed consent before testing the chromosomes. The last sentence received a blank stare from the two elders. Why do you need to specifically bring this up? What is there to disagree with? As long as you speak and make demands, how can someone still disagree? If you get some chromosomes, or in other words, get some oral epithelial cells, you can be disadvantageous to them. However, by drinking the water from the well of eternity and advancing, we can clearly detect abnormalities in the subject's chromosomes. This abnormality may not show up in normal life and battles, and may not affect its descendants. However, when the subject tries to set foot in the legend, the upper limit is locked. There was a long silence. The two elders looked at each picture, point by point, and almost fell in love with those images. If they didn't get into the virtual image, which would affect the projection effect, I'm afraid they would have buried their faces in it. This research lasted 2 days and 2 nights. Greet slept 2 times, ate 6 meals, and did 2 chromosome cutting experiments. It was at breakfast on the 3rd day that Elder Fahim came over with a pair of red eyes. As soon as he entered the door, he immediately said, "Perhaps you're right." Ah! Gretel raised his head from the dinner plate, with a vegetable leaf hanging from the corner of his mouth and a confused look on his face. Elder Fahim sat down opposite him, trying hard not to look at Sarala's stacked dinner plates next to him, and said seriously, "We carefully compared the images you gave us and investigated some new advanced people. Generally speaking, those who rely on their own strength to advance will have relatively normal chromosomes, and those who rely on external objects to advance, especially those who rely on strong external factors to advance in the short term." He shook his head regretfully. Greet raised her eyebrows. It seems that not only taking water from the well of eternity, but also other methods, such as taking powerful drugs, can also cause problems. Therefore, if powerful magic power or powerful natural force is injected in a short period of time, there will definitely be trouble. But if we extend this time as long and as smoothly as possible, there won't be any problems. Gretel's eyes suddenly lit up and he spoke faster. "I remember the eldest prince. There is no problem with the eldest prince. We have compared it carefully," Elder Fahim answered, well prepared. "We have detailed comparisons of his chromosomes before and after treatment. I believe you also have data here. After successful treatment, we have taken samples for testing each time during the last few advancements. 2 days ago, Matt and I checked the data to make sure there was no disorder. In other words, there would be no problem in using a magic circle to inject powerful natural power into the body gently and long term, as the eldest prince received treatment, right? Gretel's eyes lit up. He tapped the table gently. I have previously confirmed that injecting a high concentration of natural power into the body of a subject can induce the production of golden spots. The well water of the Well of Eternity is roughly equivalent to the mid-level Warcraft fruit to ordinary fruit flies to high-level experts. Then, if we find a suitable speed, a suitable concentration, and a suitable impact point, won't it be possible for the subjects to be promoted safely and without damage? The right speed, the right concentration, the right point. Elder Fahim smiled bitterly. It's easy to say, but not so easy to do. Any of the items proposed by Greet will require long-term and large-scale experiments. The experimental time and experimental costs make people scratch their heads just thinking about it. Hey, at least we have a direction, don't we? Go back and change the magic circle and start over. The last day. The cat needs monthly tickets. Horse. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1428. Changing the magic circle and adjusting the appropriate concentration and speed is easier said than done. It is not difficult to measure the energy of the Well of Eternity water, compare it with the energy concentration during the Great Prince's treatment, and find an upper and lower limit. However, it is too difficult to find a suitable value between this upper limit and lower limit. Even if the output process is balanced and not a complicated curve. Greet looked at the upper and lower numbers and was worried. This is dozens of times worse. The treatment of the eldest prince is to use the limited wishing technique, one after another, continuously, to change the points of the chromosomes. Therefore, energy intensity is a fluctuating curve, not a straight line. The energy induced by each peak is equivalent to the average value of the limited wishing spell over a period of time. As for the energy intensity of the Well of Eternity's water, on average for 3 days and 3 nights, it is still much lower than the average value after a limited wish spell is extended over time. After all, there were more than 900 rounds of limited wishing spells throughout the day, and its energy density had reached an extremely terrifying level. Only the Well of Eternity and the World Tree could be used to sustain it. So, we need to dilute the water from the Well of Eternity as much as possible and inject it into the human body for 3 days and 3 nights. Or, use the well water to power the magic circle. No, in this case, the energy loss must be included. Or, you can adjust it directly. First use the energy of the well water of the Well of Eternity as the standard, adjust the magic circle, and try it once. Okay, then, what kind of monster will be used as a test subject for this advancement? I'll arrange for someone to look for it. The albatross can no longer be used. Seagulls, terns, skuas, frigate birds, etc., let's see which one is suitable. Elder Amat readily took on the task. In the first round, tiger cats were used, and from the second round on, birds were used. Moreover, seabirds are given priority. After the seabirds are picked, it will be the turn of land birds. The elders can see very clearly that although Yangju Island is large, it is still a bit stressful to suddenly add a large group of half-legendary monsters. As the level of the monster increases, the appetite will increase and the territory required will increase. For monsters that live alone, such as tiger cats, you can still talk to them and try to restrain them, but monsters with a group will be a huge trouble. If this is not done carefully, the monsters on the island will fight against each other every day. Not only will they cause a mess, but the elves living on the island will also be troubled. To make matters worse, leopards eat wild boars, and wild boars attacked tree roots. The roots of the tree fell down and green grass grew out. Deer ate the grass and wolves ate the deer. One link after another, one after another. The arrangement of nature has its own subtleties. If a place is slightly out of balance, it can naturally be adjusted slowly. However, if the territory of more than a dozen or dozens of kinds of monsters expands and contracts at the same time, it may not be possible for nature to adjust. At that time, the entire Yangju Island and the cycle of natural forces will suffer. Therefore, since Udian invited the first tiger cat as an experimental subject, several elders discussed it and immediately adjusted the experimental plan. First choose seabirds, then choose migratory birds that can migrate long distances. After you have selected these, then choose from animals on land. Even if seabirds have advanced, they will go to the sea to catch food, and they will go to the sea to seize territory. I would rather die as a fellow Taoist than as a poor Taoist. The influence on Yangju Island must be minimized. A few elders went out for a walk and brought back a tern that was all white except for the top of its head and the nape of its neck. It is petite and small, holding it in the hand, only a little longer than the elder's hand. Its beak and two paws are as colorful as the most intense red coral in the sea. It jumped twice on the elder's palm and jumped in front of Gretel. Its widely forked tail converged into a straight line. He lowered his head and pecked the table twice with the tip of his beak. Are you going to help me advance? Thank you. This is my gift to you. As he spoke, he opened his right wing and flapped it twice. Under the wings, a bunch of things fell down. Large and small pearls, large and small fish scales, large and small fish bones, fish bladders, crab carapace, and some fishy-smelling things that Greet didn't quite recognize. Greet looked at the things on the table in a daze. The tern flapped its wings twice and jumped once, flapped its wings twice more and jumped once. Soon, what fell from under its wings and between its feathers was larger than its size. No, there are so many gadgets, how did you hide them? No, you have to join the group and participate in the experiment. We have certain selection criteria. You can't participate by bribery. Please take this back. Greet had to rack his brains to deal with this extraneous matter. However, after going back and forth and almost drying up his words, Yan Ou didn't agree with his reasons at all. You help me and I help you. This is what you should do. If you give me benefits, I should give you gifts. Otherwise, who will be willing to help me in the future? This, you are helping me by participating in the experiment. When you participate in the experiment, you take risks, and it is a considerable risk. Moreover, it also locks the path to advancement. You mean legend? Hi, the tern waved its wings again nonchalantly, and its tail expanded into a triangle again. If its wings could be curled up, Gretel almost thought it would be in a akimbo pose. The possibility of that kind of thing is very, very small. My father, my father's father, my father's father's father, they have never seen such a strong member of the same race in the ethnic group. It's already great to reach half-step legend. As for risk, what can you do without risk? Flying back and forth in a year without risk? Is there no risk in encountering powerful monsters? The truth is this. But I can't accept your things. It's unfair to select the subjects for the experiment after collecting the things. Fair, the tern tilted its head and cooed twice, looking at him with jewel-like eyes. What is fairness? With a warcraft, even a high-level warcraft, it may still be too difficult to explain what fairness is. Greet inhaled and exhaled, his brain turned around wildly for several times, and finally he slapped the table. Take it back, or you can leave and use another bird to advance. Take it back, just take it back, why are you so fierce? The tern chirped and flapped its wings twice. Gretel's eyes were dazzled. All the piles of things on the table had disappeared, and they didn't know where they were hidden. The tern jumped forward 2 steps, raised its head and chest, spread its wings widely, and spread its tail to both sides to form an obtuse angle. Okay. That's it? When can we start? Wait a minute, let's go through the informed consent form again. Gretel smiled and pulled out a piece of paper from the drawer. First of all, let's confirm that you participated in this experiment voluntarily and with free will. The tern's wings and tail, as well as the feathers on its head, drooped dejectedly. According to the established experimental plan, the elders adjusted the magic array and input energy into the tern's body according to a fixed value. In an instant, the tern flapped its wings and screamed. So hot! So hot! So hot! So hot! So hot! No matter how hot it is, it won't open. Gretel had a lot of experience with the tiger cat, and he had already asked the magic vine Varido to take action and tied up the tern tightly. No matter how much the tern screamed or struggled, it could only flap the tips of its wings slightly. As for the two bones at the back, as well as the connected muscles and blood vessels, I'm sorry, I can't move them. The magic circle is operating at full capacity. The NMR was running full blast. Gretel squinted his eyes and stared at the image output from the MRI machine. Elder Fahim sat on the other side of the tern, half squinting his eyes, and his mental power was firmly locked on the tern. The number of muscle ruptures is much smaller than that of the previous subjects. Even so, the life breath in the tern's body rose little by little, like a sea tide. 1 day and 1 night, 2 days and 2 nights, 3 days and 3 nights. It wasn't until the total output energy reached the estimated value and Elder Fahim closed the magic circle that it let out a long scream. Gah! In the tree hole, Gretel covered his ears with his hands, and his whole face twisted from a bun to a bun with 18 pleats. Is this considered a success in the advancement? It's so unpleasant to scream. I've already put on soundproof earmuffs. Why do I feel dizzy when I scream? Is this tern's call emitting infrasonic waves or ultrasonic waves? The advancement should have been successful. However, there is still a long way to go before becoming a half-step legend. Elder Fahim sighed. He waved his hand to let Mo Teng untie him, and as agreed, he took turn out for a complete inspection. Strength, speed, various skills, energy values, and most importantly, take samples and test the chromosomes again. From the high-level beginner to the advanced intermediate level, there is still a step away from the high-level advanced level. It seems that there are some mysteries that we don't know about in the water of the well of eternity, and it cannot be purely based on energy. At the discussion meeting after the experiment, Elder Fahim talked eloquently. Greet nodded slightly, compared the two chromosome images, and said softly. But the situation of chromosomal disorders is much better, or in other words, there is almost no disorder. As for whether its potential for advancement is locked, we need to observe it for a long time. Design the next experiment. Maybe, if you make some adjustments this time and lock some chromosomes for enhancement, the possibility of advancement will be greater. But which chromosomes are strengthened? Gretel looked at the elders. Elder Amat and Elder Fahim looked back with calm expressions. You are a pioneer in this direction, why don't you ask us? Forget it, let's conduct another general study, the Elves on Everlasting Island, high-level advanced, half-step legends, if possible, it is best to come and test where the golden point is. With this data, it will be easier for us to strengthen it in a targeted manner. By the way, you can also ask Nevis, maybe they also have accumulated data. Thinking of such a large amount of research and the corresponding expenses, Gretel felt powerless. He made arrangements one by one and wandered back to his residence. Before he entered, he saw dozens of boxes stacked at the door of the yard. What's this? Greet asked Bernard in astonishment. Not long after he moved back, Bernard, who was training at the Magic Academy and taking care of the door, poked his head and said in a loud voice. Boss, these are all gifts from the elves, They said they want to join this project and know that the cost is very high and they can't let you pay for it alone. Gretel. Does this count as bringing money into the group? However, doing so is against experimental ethics. Monthly ticket plus 24 updates to get it? It's the last 4 hours. Please vote. Specially requesting tickets for tomorrow. Next month's guaranteed monthly ticket, please be sure to vote for Cat Meow. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1429. Gretel clasped his hands behind his back and walked in a circle at the entrance of the small courtyard, and then circled again. Fortunately, the courtyard where he lives is called Small Courtyard and is actually quite large. He, Sarah, Bernard, APA's girlfriend Shiloh, and Udian, everyone has a room. What, you said APA and Shiloh can live in the same room? This one, that one, APA's human form sleeps in one room, deer form and Shiloh sleep in another room. Considering APA's size, his and Shiloh's rooms were extra large. That is to say, Sarah's silver dragon form is too huge, and there is no special dragon nest for her. Otherwise, the area of the yard will have to be increased 10 times. Right now, when Sarah wants to enjoy the dragon's nest, she can either go to the nearby mountain top to roll around, or simply lie down on the top of the world tree. No matter when, the world tree has never rejected her. With such a big house, only the entrance to the yard, or in other words, outside the flower wall, can accommodate piles of gifts. When you give gifts, do you dare to be a little smaller? What's going on with that huge box? The coffin can't even keep up with its size. If it's bigger, it can be called a container. And the flower pot next to it? Is that a flower pot? That's called a water tank. The tree planted in the water tank, that tree. If I accept it this time, next time, will you just send an ancient tree over? Gretel walked around 3 times in a row before patting his head and rubbing his forehead helplessly. These gifts are all attached with green leaves or soft vines, and their names and long family names are signed in grapevine-like cursive script. However, Greet felt a headache when he saw the curly fonts, and it was even more headache when he saw that his first and last names were filled with vines and had twists and turns. There were so many words crowded together that he didn't even want to read them, let alone identify who the gift belonged to and which family it belonged to. As for breaking up with the owner of the gift, turning around and looking around, there were indeed several heads looming in the nearby woods. In addition to elves poking their heads, there are also birds looking curiously, and foxes stretching their heads covertly. Please, with this agile look, you can tell at a glance that it is not an ordinary animal. Turning into animals, or using animal companions to get information, you guys are a little too open about it. Greet was complaining madly in his heart. However, at this time, it was useless to catch those probing elves. They would just beat the snake and follow the stick, trying desperately to make him accept these gifts. Just like before the operation or before the rescue is completed, it is useless to ask the patient's family to take back the red envelope. They will only double the money. The correct approach is to hand the red envelope to the medical office and help deposit the medical expenses in the name of the patient. After the patient is discharged from the hospital, let him or his family members settle the settlement by themselves. Like now. Gretel looked around and immediately called Idian to gather all the gifts. You can send it to the Magic Academy, throw it directly into the material library, or send it to the project team. In short, these gifts will definitely not go into his own pocket. Spread the news for me. I won't accept these things. When it comes to participating in experiments or whatever, who should be included in the group or who should be included in the group? I will only consider it fairly based on the purpose of the experiment. I will not let anyone in because of who gave me a gift. Hey, it's not like that dash. As for, or, you inform them and take the things back. It's not too late to take them back now. Gretel left the question to Idion, letting him smile bitterly, summoning vines to weave into a cart, throwing the gifts up one by one, and then summoning Apollila. The wheels of the trolley are not perfectly round, but fortunately they are automatically equipped with floating skills. Even if they are not too round, the friction with the ground is not too great, and Appa can still pull them. The silver moon deer walked majestically in front, and Hero held a rope to pull the cart in her mouth, walking beside her meaningfully. The rope was even loose. It was obvious that the female unicorn did not exert any effort. On the contrary, the cart that Idion summoned stretched out a large bush of vines, gathering and fixing a cart full of gifts. If it weren't for the limited height of the road under the trees, I'm afraid the gifts on the cart could be piled twice as high. Anyway, they are supported by the floating technique, and at worst they can be pulled by vines. Just fly a kite and drag them over. Right now, I have no choice but to work hard for Idion and Appa, running back and forth once, then again, twice, 3 times, 4 or 5 times. These large quantities of gifts were delivered, and the elves who gave the gifts were immediately alarmed. However, Greed stayed behind closed doors and refused all communication, so they could only go to the elders to ask around. After asking around, I only found 2 pieces of information. First, Greed stated resolutely that gifts would not be accepted and gifts would not be used as a criterion for selecting candidates for inclusion in the group. Anyone who wanted to send more gifts would be disqualified from joining the group. Second, Greed said privately that animal experiments must be conducted first for the first few batches of research. If you can choose a small one, choose a small one. It is light in weight and consumes less. Well, water from the well of eternity is not cheap. If you can save some, try to save as much as you can. So, should we give it a try and send the messengers we trained into the group? The elves who failed to send gifts discussed privately. Anyway, we don't expect those messengers to become legends, to be able to reach half-step legend, or to advance even once. It would be good. We train ourselves, how many resources will be spent to advance each time? But, the advancement is too high, can we sustain it? We ourselves have not reached the half-step legend. What's there to worry about? Swifts, terns, and even gray geese are all docile birds. Even if the advancement is successful, at least they won't bite back, right? However, here at Greet, even birds are not accepted for the time being. In order to help the subject advance in a targeted manner, Greet shifted the focus of his work to the study of chromosomes. Low-level warrior. Intermediate warrior. High-level warrior. Low-level spellcaster. Intermediate spellcaster. High-level spellcaster. There are also legends. As long as they are easy to talk to and willing to give face to, Greet shamelessly asks for a tissue sample and asks him to test the chromosome points. Buzz buzz, buzz buzz. The oak stick, or the fruit on the oak tree, has grown from 1 to 10, then to 20 or 30, and then to 40 or 50. The tree canopy covers most of the laboratory, and the tree roots are winding like snakes, extending far outside the yard. The elves working in the laboratory began delivering fertilizer once every 10 days, then once every 5 days, and soon, once every 3 days. Boss, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to be exhausted. If you work faster, you won't die from exhaustion. Greet was so busy recording, comparing, and analyzing these chromosome samples that he felt dizzy and his eyes were bloodshot. Even with the help of a treatment, he would give his eyes a shot from time to time, but the treatment did not cure dry eye syndrome, at least it was not symptomatic, and his eyes were still very dry. I can't get up. I'm done. Oak staff continued to make a fuss. On its body, a small snake with black stripes on a white background emerged, getting bigger and bigger, entangled in the canopy of the tree in the form of a giant python, and poked its head out to look out. The little snake has been helping me these days. It keeps working all day long without closing its eyes. It can't stand it anymore. Boss, you are squeezing us too much. Why don't you give yourself a level up? Gretel didn't even look back. He compared the 50 samples in his hand, which came from the same elf family, ranging from low level to legendary. It can be seen that the distribution of golden points does have some regularity. At least a few of the legendary points are consistent with low-level warriors. However, comparing all the legends together, this regularity is not much better than 3 short and 1 long. Choose the longer one. I need more samples, I need more data. Ashu, separate all the warriors and spellcasters so far and see which points are unique to warriors and which are unique to spellcasters. Some. Should I advance? Boss, if you don't advance, how can I advance? The leaves of the oak staff were shaking, and even the 14 thick branches branching out from the main trunk were trembling up and down, almost trying to perform an invincible Hot Wheel. Gretel coughed and knocked on the table. You have your own chromosomes, don't you? Concentrate your energy, mobilize the power of nature around you, and try to change one? Extend a golden dot. No, can. Or can you let the little snake advance and try it? Don't make trouble, the little snake doesn't even have a physical body. Where did it get its chromosomes? Greet was so busy that she didn't even look up. 50 samples are not enough, 100 samples are not enough, then more samples are needed. Have all the teachers, researchers, and students in the Magic Academy finished sampling? Where are the guardians of the Elven Court? Where are the soldiers? How about so many people in the Elf King's court? The warriors guarding the World Tree, the patrollers around the Great Rift, the guardians of each node of the mystery chain, the children, adults, hunters, and guardians in each village. Go and take samples. Go to work. Speed. I need more data, Gretel gave the order without hesitation. At the same time, send a message to Nevis through the Mage Tower. Do you have the chromosome sampling and scanning data of human professionals? Do you have the data of different levels, different professions, and extraordinary points? Can you send me a batch? I need it here. Well, actually, I have a batch of ready-made ones here. Archmage Hines appeared out of nowhere. Black Crow Swamp has invested a lot of energy in this project and obtained a lot of data. Of course, most of them are skeletons, zombies, and various undead creatures. If you don't mind, you can also use them. Bring it first. Bring it, Greet was overjoyed. At this time, only those who hate having less data don't dislike those who have too much data. Bring it. Bring it, bring it. At this time, there are only those who hate the small monthly ticket, and there are no people who dislike the large monthly ticket. The cat wants a monthly pass. Everyone, take a look at the guaranteed monthly tickets in the ticket warehouse and vote for me first. Don't worry about the double at the end of the month, just stabilize the top 10 in fantasy first. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1430. Even if there is a continuous flow of data coming in, it will not take a day or two for Greet to get the results. As for Nevis, the research on extraordinary points and extraordinary abilities is not that fast. Probably, maybe, it's not that easy to find so many extraordinary people, convince them to participate in research, give their cells and tissues, and register their skill preferences, right? It is difficult to find people and difficult to gain trust. Doing this research requires a large number of microscopes, strong energy, and other material conditions. On the Nevis side, there are only so many magicians that can be freed, and there are only so many mage towers that can be freed. Excessive energy consumption will cause problems in the entire defense system. Unlike here on Eternal Judgment Island, the trust in Gretel is relatively high and the energy supply is relatively sufficient. With the Well of Eternity here, how can there be a lack of energy? To his surprise, it was the Black Crow Swamp that gave him the biggest surprise. After opening this document, he realized why Archmage Hines held his head high and his chest so high. The ghoul has advanced, and the targeted strengthening points include: Zombie advancement, points to increase the toughness of the skin, points to reduce the speed of decay, points to increase the reaction speed of the zombies. Corpse Witch, Death Knight. Greed was overjoyed. Black Crow Swamp can obtain these data, and it is estimated that it always uses a lot of methods that exceed the limits and are not very humane. But having said that, whether it's a ghoul, a zombie, or other undead creature, it's all dead after all. Even death, by any means, shouldn't be considered inhumane, right? Although he has counted more than 2,000 extraordinary points so far, not every point is useful, or has a clear use. He used the limited wishing technique to dig out and cultivate each one by one. So far, he has only identified less than 20 points. With this batch of data from Black Crow Swamp, at the very least, he can avoid many detours. Greed brushed, and recorded these contents. Remove these points, remove those points that are common to spellcasters and not shared by warriors, and then remove points that are shared by combatants and not shared by spellcasters. Part of it is used to improve basic quality, part of it is used to improve elemental affinity, and part of it is used to improve combat skills. Greed guessed silently. Of course, it is not ruled out that some extraordinary points are purely accidental mutations and have no functionality. So, the extraordinary points that may be functional need to be checked one by one. There are currently about 500, 600, 700. 700. Greed held his head and knocked it on the table. 700 extraordinary points must be investigated one by one, and each one must understand its function. When should we go? In other words, adjust the magic circle and use the method of treating the eldest prince to light up all 700 points in one breath, at least in batches, and see what changes happen to the illuminated objects. No matter how you think about it, it is a huge project. Gretel, how's your progress? Cyrilla stuck her head out and glanced at the light screen in front of him and the densely drawn draft paper, which made her dizzy if she looked at it twice more. These days, if she wanted to help Gretel, she would help Gretel. If she wanted to study at the Magic Academy, she would go to the Magic Academy. If she wanted to practice fighting, she would catch Idian or any familiar warrior to practice with. When I get tired of practicing and don't want to work, I just stay in the Magic Academy and eat and drink, go out to the sea to fish and eat and drink, or fly to the top of the world tree and sleep in the sun. Even if the rhythm is so relaxed, it is considered extremely hard working for the Dragon Clan. During this period of time, Cyrilla felt that she had made great progress. Although there is still a long way to go to advance again, we have already passed half, no, 1/3 of the way. It's still early. Greed replied in an extremely weak voice that sounded like he was about to throw himself into the street in the next second. Maybe there is something wrong with his thinking, maybe his research methods need to be improved, maybe he is too eager for success. Human genome sequencing, it took him decades to complete it with a team of big bosses in his previous life, now he leads his own team to do it, and it is probably impossible to complete it in 3 to 5 years. But, he could afford to wait for 3 to 5 years, and Bernard's patience was probably running out. And Cyrilla, the Silver Dragon girl, has mentioned several times that she wants to go to Dragon Island with him. Are you asking her to wait 3 to 5 years? Gretel estimated that Cyrilla might transform back into dragon form, grab him and fly away. Hey, don't work so hard, he leaned back, but Cyrilla came over and shook his shoulders directly. It's okay to be lazy occasionally. You can also relax and stretch your mind. Gretel, let's go for a walk. It's been so long since we've been to Evergem Island, except for the first month here, you haven't played with me yet. Play, what to play with? Gretel's eyes were dull, and he leaned forward and back, tilted forward and back with Cyrilla's power, and his head shook back and forth. On Yangju Island, there are peaks covered with snow that never melt, and beaches with light white waves below, dense forests, deep ravines, and clear streams and springs. There are gentle grasslands, clear lakes, and a rainbow bridge that connects the two islands and stands in the void. It can be said that there are scenery everywhere. You can go anywhere and play for a day, 2, 7 or 8 days without any pressure. However, when it comes to going out with Cyrilla, Gretel has no idea at all. Play. Where to play? What projects do you play? How many days to play? Where to stay and what to eat? Is there a tour guide on Yangju Island? Is there a hotel? Is there anyone to help them plan everything? The most important thing is whether there is a high-speed optical fiber network that allows him to remotely control the laboratory and conduct research remotely while playing with Cyrilla. Oh, forget it, I won't let you play anymore. Seeing Gretel's eyes widening, Cyrilla burst out laughing. She let go of Gretel's shoulders, turned around, and sat on the table in front of him. Greet, please test my chromosomes. What? Test mine. Cyrilla pressed the edge of the table with her left hand, supported her knees with her right hand, and leaned towards Greet. While leaning forward, he opened his lips and tried to expose the inside of his mouth. So many chromosomes have been studied, and you don't want to study mine? Look, it's very simple, dash. Cyrilla, don't make trouble. Gretel was sweating. As the silver dragon girl leaned over, her fragrant breath hit him, and her warm breath almost hit his face. Not to mention this angle. Cyrilla, do you know that this angle is very dangerous? Do you know that it's easy for me to have random thoughts? It's just to take an epithelial cell. Gretel, aren't you very skilled? Come on, hurry up. Greet leaned back, but did not avoid it, and then dragged the chair back to avoid it, but still did not avoid it. Still wanting to shrink further, Cyrilla raised one foot and gently stepped on his knee. Hurry up. I've been posing for so long. Celera. Greet's heart was pounding, and he felt that it had exceeded 160 beats per minute, which is the rhythm of atrial fibrillation every minute. Fortunately, the rapid beating of his heart pumped a large amount of blood into his brain, causing his thoughts to spin rapidly and his brain to think faster. In desperation, I actually found an excuse. Cyrilla, your current form is a human form, an elf form. In elf form, the chromosomes measured may be inaccurate. It's best. Hey, you should have told me earlier. Cyrilla's expression just stiffened, and then she smiled happily. She jumped off the table, hopped twice on one leg, found the discarded shoe and put it on, then turned back to pull Greet. Let's go. What are you doing in a daze? Aren't you going to take the test in dragon form? Let's go out together. Greet was dragged out by her as if her feet were not touching the ground. Walk out of the laboratory, take 3 steps and 2 steps at a time, and come to the open space outdoors. There was a slight whistle, the silver light in front of him surged, and the wind blew violently. Gretel closed his eyes subconsciously and was pushed a few steps away by the wind. When he stood still again and opened his eyes, a beautiful and majestic silver dragon more than 30 meters long was already standing in front of him. The giant dragon flicked its tail, slowly bowed its head, and lay on the ground. The dragon's mouth opened, and 2 rows of sword-like teeth faced each other. Judging from the height, it already exceeded his height. Gretel, hurry up. Speed up. Celera, please don't inhale too hard, and don't sneeze. When I come here to take samples, if you take a deep breath, I am not afraid of you blowing out a breath of dragon breath, but I am afraid of being sucked directly into your throat and choking you for whatever reason. Hurry up. Cyrilla urged impatiently. Greet quickly stepped forward and stood on tiptoes. First, he threw a ball of light, which floated into Cyrilla's mouth. Then he threw out a mage's hand, instead of a cotton swab, and went in to scrape her oral epithelial cells. Once, twice, 3 times, according to the operating procedures. After scraping 20 times in one breath, the mage's hand floated out and returned to greet. Sink down and enter the test tube. Well. What's the matter? The sampling seems to have failed, Celera. The toughness of the dragon's mouth seems to be beyond my estimation. That's for sure. If you don't have tenacity, how can you withstand the breath? Cyrilla replied matter-of-factly, wagging the tip of her tail, looking very proud. After wandering around, I felt a little worried again. Then what should I do? Do you want me to do it myself? Break off a piece of scale for you? Or, let me take a small bite? Don't, Gretel jumped up, that hurts. I'll do it, I'll do it. He gritted his teeth and used his hands and feet to crawl into Cyrilla's mouth. Alas, although it is a bit like risking one's life to fall into the tiger's mouth, no, the dragon's mouth, but it is still much better to break off the scales than Cyrilla herself. Cyrilla, please be patient and don't bite it off. Today's subscription is so bad, it dropped to the 15th place on the fantasy bestseller list. I'm crying. Fortunately, the monthly ticket ranking is still okay, and there is still a bit of exposure, so I can hope to save it. The cat wiped its tears with its pink pads and continued to ask for a guaranteed monthly ticket. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1431. The dragon chromosomes really opened Greet's eyes. The first is the number of chromosome pairs. Not 23 pairs, not 26 pairs, not 30 pairs. Greet's eyes were almost pierced by the huge mess, and he couldn't even count how many pairs there were. 80, right? 100 pairs? Or more. According to the hesitant report from the Oak staff, it observed countless times with the tower spirit and the little snake from different angles. I have probably sorted out about 100 pairs of chromosomes, but there is still a small half of the mess that I have not sorted out. The second is the number of chromosome points. I don't even understand the logarithm, and I can't understand the positions of the chromosomes even more. However, the number of confirmed points so far is probably more than 10 times the number of his own chromosomes. The so-called dragon clan's memory inheritance, the dragon clan's innate spells, etc., are probably, maybe, probably, all buried in these chromosomes. As for why in legends, dragons can produce offspring with humans, elves, and various creatures. How come organisms with different chromosome numbers can reproduce and the next generation can continue to reproduce, instead of losing the ability to produce offspring like mules and ligers? Gretel decided that there must be a road before the car reaches the mountain. Before driving to the mountain, he should not think about such difficult problems for the time being. Anyway, he is still far away from facing this problem. He hasn't been to Dragon Island yet. He hasn't met Cyrilla's parents yet. He is not stupid to worry about problems beyond his ability so far in advance. However, after being interrupted by Cyrilla and forced to study the chromosomes of the silver dragon girl, Gretel's thoughts became much more active. Since the workload was too large, he stopped studying them one by one and compared the high-level and primary chromosomes with the legendary chromosomes on a large scale. All extraordinary points that are not available in high-level beginners and are included in legends are marked. The side unique to the warrior, the side unique to the spellcaster, and those from both sides are put together. Then, mark specific points, adjust the magic circle, and infuse a large amount of natural breath. Use the limited wishing technique to lock the points one by one, guide the natural breath, and make these points extraordinary. So this is roughly the idea. At the meeting the next day, Gretel pointed to the newly prepared documents and talked to the elders. Considering that this approach has successful precedents in Nevis and Evermeet Island, and will not cause chromosomal disorders, I think this is a feasible idea. What about muscle and bone strengthening? Elder Amat listened very attentively. After listening, he pondered and asked questions. Gretel scratched his head. The purification of a large amount of natural breath will have a strengthening effect on the body. Moreover, I am considering using a small amount of well water from the well of eternity to have a catalytic effect on the basis of infusing the natural breath. You can give it a try. Several elders looked at each other and agreed. Of course, there is a problem. These chromosome studies are all based on elves, and there is no research on the chromosome sequence of Warcraft. So, are you going to directly use elves as subjects? It seems like this is the only way. Gretel nodded with a grimace. Experimenting with elves is very expensive. Each person needs to use an entire portion of the Well of Eternity's water, or, like the time when treating the eldest prince, the magic circle needs to be turned on to make the Well of Eternity operate at full capacity. However, if you want a more trouble-free and economical solution, there is no more. The number of extraordinary samples in a single type of Warcraft is far less than that of elves or humans. Chromosome data of different types of Warcraft cannot be mixed. Hey, let's try it directly with elves. It has the benefits of using elves instead, Elder Amat comforted him. The Great Elder has seen many ups and downs in his life, and he really doesn't take into account the energy of these 3 melons and 2 dates. In any case, these experiments have also enhanced the power of our clan. From this point of view, Gretel, it is us who want to thank you. Master of batch manufacturing. Moreover, it is safe, rarely painful, and may not lock the upper limit of manufacturing masters. Even if this road doesn't work, there are still a group of strong elves who can accept the nourishment of the power of nature and rise from high-level junior to high-level advanced, and even to half-step legend. The strength of the elf clan, the lifespan of those masters, and the strength of the family will all increase to a certain extent. For this reason, if a little bit of energy is used, what does it matter? The Well of Eternity is nothing more than burning a bit of ore, and when it's used up, you can just go dig it in the secret realm. The natural power on Yangju Island, as long as nature is operating harmoniously and the forest is absorbing power and not excessively extracted, it will be inexhaustible and inexhaustible. Now that the plan is approved, the next step is to find experimental subjects. On this point, Gretel completely let it go. He only set a standard and left the matter of finding people to Idian and several elders. First of all, it must be a high-level one. It can be an advanced beginner level, a high-level intermediate level, or a high-level advanced level. Well, it is best to be a junior level, so that it is easier to see the experimental results. Secondly, you must be a warrior. According to current research, it seems that this method of energy infusion is more effective for warriors. Spellcasters mainly rely on their own research and insights, and force-feeding is useless. Finally, it's best to be those warriors who have exhausted their potential and have no chance of taking another step forward. After all, it's not good to interrupt the possibility of others advancing. In addition to these few criteria, Gretel will never say another word or choose one more person. All requests and favors should go to the elders, not me. What kind of family, age, past military exploits, various human connections and sophistication? I don't know, I don't care, I don't pay attention, don't tell me. Even with such an attitude, it couldn't stop the elves from digging for cracks and looking for solutions from him. On the first night, Gretel and Cyrilla were sitting face to face, eating, when an old elf came over next to them. Hey, can I sit here? Greet looked at the table awkwardly. 4 large plates with a diameter of 1 meter already occupied the long table, and there was no room for more plates. What's worse is that the approach of this elf has aroused Cyrilla's vigilance. She raised her head from the dinner plate, raised her arms, and clasped them vaguely. Mine. These are all mine. Although the silver dragon girl didn't speak, her body language was very obvious. I've finished eating. Just say a few words and leave. The elf, who walked slowly, looked tired and had some brown spots on his face, smiled empathetically. I am Lemon Silverleaf of the Silverleaf family. I have a son who is not very successful. After he advanced to a high level, he has never been able to take another step forward. I just wanted to ask if I could join him. Experiment plan. I leave this matter to the elders. Facing the elders, Greed replied as pleasantly as possible. Lemon Silverleaf smiled. I know. But no matter what, you are also the person in charge of this project. If you ask, no one will refuse. I am not responsible for this aspect of work, Greed answered patiently with a smile on his face. However, the other party ignored it and continued to request. My son was injured while guarding the Great Rift. He went back and forth, and Cyrilla emptied a whole plate of food before he could stop. Seeing that Gretel hadn't eaten a bite so far, and people were gradually starting to line up next to her, the silver dragon girl finally couldn't help it anymore. Greed said he wouldn't care, so he won't care. The elders are very fair and just. If you have any problems and want to get involved, go to the elders. As he spoke, vertical pupils appeared, and the dragon's power was fully activated. Gretel was stunned on the spot, and the old elf's face instantly turned pale and then turned red. After a pause, he left silently. People watching and queuing from a distance dispersed. Gretel let out a big sigh of relief and looked at Cyrilla gratefully. Fortunately, I have you. From the next day on, he tried his best to stay at home and hide under Cyrilla's dragon power. He even asked someone to deliver his food directly. After hiding like this for 3 days, an unexpected guest came to the door. Mother. Gretel looked at the young woman in front of him in shock. Freed from the job of appeasing the ancient tree, Iluni Imogil has regained her youth. In the past few years, she has actually looked younger. She cultivates flowers and grass, regulates nature, and relearns all kinds of knowledge and magic. She lives a leisurely, clean, and carefree life. Apart from occasionally asking Cyrilla out to play and making delicious food for Gretel, this was the first time that she came here specifically. His face was a little tired, and there was a rare look of worry between his eyebrows. Mother? What's wrong? Have you been in any trouble recently? No. Iluni shook her head slightly. Her soft eyes fell on her son, a little focused and a little loving. Recently, I have been concentrating on studying magic in the royal court, so I will not come here. If anyone uses my name to ask for this or you should ignore it. It is not my intention. Has someone bothered you? Gretel raised his eyebrows, with rare anger in his eyes. Is he so talkative that he can't even protect his own mother? No, we are all relatives. We walk around and talk, but nothing bothers me. Iluni smiled softly. I'll go to the royal court for a while and they will understand and won't bother me anymore. Don't worry, Mom will be fine. Gretel raised a smile and personally sent her mother back to the royal court, repeatedly asking for help from the female officials she met along the way. When he returned to the Magic Academy, his face immediately changed. Udian, when he spoke, he was not murderous, but full of anger. Help me ask, how many people are bothering my mother? Their children will be kicked out and not allowed to join the group. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1432. I don't know how Udian conveyed it. In short, after Gretel lost his temper, the surrounding area was indeed a lot cleaner. 5 days later, 3 elves who were selected to participate in the experiment sat in front of Gretel. 2 middle-aged elves, one male and one female, are strong, with a bit of weather on their faces. When they stand there, they naturally have a perseverance and calmness. They took turns shaking hands with Gretel and introducing themselves. Marikaoba, the Ranger of Torrent Forest. He is 638 years old this year. Aida Mundua, Captain of the Far Sea Patrol of Evergreen Island. She is 621 years old this year. Greet was in awe. Whether they are the forest guards of the Riptide Forest or the distant sea patrols of Evergem Island, these are all warriors fighting on the front line. Looking at their momentum and the majesty of their movements, it is obvious that they have been fighting on the front line for a long time and have paid countless blood and sacrifices. It would be great if there was a chance to allow them to go further, especially if it could not block their way forward. Gretel shook hands with them vigorously, then turned to the third person. This elf was older than the previous two. He had a shocking knife mark on his cheek, which reached directly to the corner of his eye and extended to his chin. The elves are a race favored by nature. Their prime period is also extremely long, and the time for aging and illness to befall them is extremely short. But this elf clearly showed his age. Is this possible? Greet's first reaction was not will it be a waste if he participates in the project at such an old age, but will he be able to survive it if he participates in the project at such an old age? While thinking about it, he reached out to hold hands with the other person. The old elf seemed to be aware of Gretel's thoughts. He grinned and exerted force on his hand. Ouch! Gretel almost jumped. This old man must be too cruel. His palms are as rough as sandpaper for polishing parts, and his strength is stronger than pliers, not much different from a bench vise. I am Kirkland Nightbreeze, a guard of the royal court. I am 783 years old this year, the old elf introduced himself proudly. After speaking, he let go of his hand and pointed at his heart. Don't look at my age, but it's still very good here. I will be able to withstand the experimental process. Master Nordmark, please. Cardiopulmonary function is indeed an important part of the enrollment assessment. Whether using the water from the well of eternity or receiving infusion from a magic circle, the subject may endure great pain. However, in order to advance, he must maintain control of his body from beginning to end and cannot be under anesthesia. Therefore, when Elder Fahim and others evaluated the subjects, they almost copied the items that Gretel had checked for the eldest prince. However, this 783-year-old man, no matter how good his cardiopulmonary function is, can still be considered to be approximately equivalent to a human being of 78 years old, or at least 70 years old. Is it really okay for him to join? Mage Nordmark, as you said, this experiment may be dangerous. Seeing Gretel's hesitation, Kirkland Nightbreeze restrained his smile and said seriously. If we old guys can't participate in experiments that may go wrong, how about letting young people face the crisis? Don't hesitate, just use me. Faced with the old man's heart-wrenching remarks, Gretel took a deep breath and finally forced himself to smile. His personal task was actually just to confirm the informed consent of each experimenter, to confirm that they fully understood the situation, that they were all voluntary, and that no one was forced. As for screening the experimental subjects and confirming that each experimental subject meets the conditions, these tasks are the responsibility of Elder Ahmad, Elder Fahim, and other legends in the experimental team. Subjects who can be approved by them and sent to him should not have any problems no matter what. Thank you for your hard work. Gretel reached forward with his right hand and squeezed Kirkland Nightbreeze's palm hard. As you said, this experiment may be dangerous, especially for the elderly. If you can't hold it any longer, be sure to stop and don't think about hold on a little longer, hold on a little longer. If we call to stop, we still have time to treat him, but if we hold on a little longer, it might be too late. You know, if a subject's life is in danger, the experimental progress will be delayed and resources wasted, which will be many times more than just giving up and withdrawing from the group. Kirkland nodded gravely. If it was just him who sacrificed himself, he would not be afraid, it would just be natural. However, the thought of delaying the experimental progress and wasting research resources. Don't worry, I will definitely pay attention and won't cause you any trouble. So, can I be the first to go? Greet smiled slightly. He obviously didn't completely persuade the old warrior. Fortunately, the other party still promised to be cautious. He bowed slightly and said seriously. Following the established order, you are the third one to enter the experiment. Don't worry, we still have to conduct final tests on your chromosomes, and debug and lock the magic circle. Please take a good rest these days, adjust your state, relax, and I wish you success. Early on the third day, when the first ray of morning light shone on the top of the world tree, Maracaiba was the first to step into the magic circle. He was bare-chested and only wore a pair of shorts, so that researchers and healers outside the magic circle could observe his condition in real time. He sat with his eyes closed outside the magic circle. Elder Fahim opened the energy supply circle connected to the Well of Eternity. Gretel turned on the microscope and the magic circle connected to the microscope. Idion poured a test tube of well water from the Well of Eternity into a special container connected to the magic circle. Start. 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 Huge energy rotates and gathers. Under the microscope and electron microscope, or in front of the analytical array dedicated to the microscope and electron microscope, the chromosome image on the light screen lit up with golden light extremely slowly. The first scheduled point is completed. The second scheduled point is completed. The bicep started to tear. The gluteus maximus is starting to break. Latissimus dorsi ligament stretch. The heart rate is 120, 125, 130-125. He is adjusting his breathing and trying to control himself. Good job. -130, it goes up again, but it does not exceed the dangerous value dash. Greet remained silent and stared at the light screen. So far, the entire experiment is still proceeding according to the predetermined pace. The subject's vital signs show no signs of danger, and their vitality continues to rise. The amount of Well of Eternity water used was greatly reduced, and it was injected into the subjects in a slow-release manner. The pain of the subjects has been greatly reduced, and the spikes in blood pressure and heart rate have also been reduced. They are no longer hovering on the dangerous line like in the previous experiments. I hope it can succeed. I hope this time, I can be closer to success, and further away from cutting off the path forward for these soldiers. The experiment lasted 3 full days and nights. According to the original plan, the changes to the chromosomes only lasted 1 day. The number of chromosomes that need to be changed is much less than that of the eldest prince. It is quite prudent to continue it for 1 day. The work of injecting the water into the Well of Eternity and changing the physique of the warriors lasted for 3 full days based on previous experience. 3 days later, Maracaiba staggered out of the magic circle. His steps were shaky, as if he had shed a layer of skin. Despite this, his eyes were extremely bright. As soon as he walked out of the tree hole, he clenched his fist and waved it in a circle. Boom! The fist waving out from the void exploded with the sound of wind and thunder. Advanced successfully. To what extent? This still needs to be evaluated, but success is already certain. As agreed, Maracaiba took a deep sleep and had a full meal before being immediately taken away for evaluation. Speed, strength, reaction ability, actual combat. The results of various evaluations are that he has advanced from high-level beginner to high-level advanced, and has not even touched the edge of legend. However, the analysis of chromosomes also showed that his chromosomes were disordered to some extent, but the degree of disorder was not as high as that of previous subjects. As for whether I can set foot in the legend, Elder Harold said very subtly. The door is not completely closed, but to push it open requires many times more effort than others. After all, you also know dash. Even so, Marikaoba is content. As for the many times the effort, are you kidding? There is no price for doing anything? With his qualifications and age, he would have never been close to becoming a legend, let alone a legend. He said goodbye and left with great satisfaction. Soon, news of the progress of the experiment spread throughout Yangju Island. Even Bernard couldn't hold himself back and came to ask. "Boss, can I dash?" "You're still early." Greed pushed Bernard back with a dark face. To conduct such a large-scale experiment and use so many resources is not to seek personal gain with power, but to help Bernard advance safely. It's a good thing now, the glimmer of success is just a little bit visible, and this guy comes over and asks to join the group. After mercilessly blasting Bernard away, Greed carried out the experiment step by step according to the established plan. For the second subject, Aida Mundio, the time for modifying the chromosome remained unchanged, but the time for injecting well water was shortened to 1 day, which was the same as the time for modifying the chromosome. As a result of the experiment, the degree of chromosomal disorder was reduced, and the degree of progression was also reduced. Maybe, add some more water to the well? The third subject, Kirkland Nightwind, has the same parameters as Aida Mundio, and the well water in the well of eternity increases by 10%. As a result of the experiment, ventricular fibrillation occurred halfway through the experiment. The experiment was stopped urgently and rescued, and then he was rescued. The fourth, the fifth, sixth. Finally, the time for modifying the chromosomes was extended to 1.5 days, and the time for injecting well water was also maintained for 1.5 days. The well water from the well of eternity was injected in an amount of 0.6 parts, and was catalyzed by a magic circle for slow release. With this parameter, even 5 warriors can be steadily improved to high-level advanced levels, and the level of chromosomal disorder is only 10% of that of directly taking the eternal water. If the legendary door is closed because of a chromosomal disorder, then as a result, the door is only tilted inward, which is far from being closed with only a crack left. Now, the final problem and choice is placed in front of Gretel. Should Bernard be forcibly promoted? It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1433. If the person standing in front of him was an elf, Gretel would have already decided to give him surgery, no, a transformation plan. From high-level beginner to high-level advanced, from level 13 to level 18 or 19, the road to legend is not closed, and the future is promising. The price paid was just sitting in the magic circle for a day and a half, enduring pain that was not too severe. Where can I find such a good thing? But Bernard is different. The chromosome points of barbarians and the chromosome points of elves are not exactly the same, but they are completely different. Use the elf's points to set directly on the barbarian? This is the only way I can. Greet sat in front of Bernard seriously and told him his plan and all his concerns from beginning to end. Using the elf's chromosome points directly will probably affect your future promotion. The greater possibility is that there will be problems that I can't foresee or control at all. Such as death, such as becoming a monster. Gretel couldn't say what would happen without sufficient experiments. However, drinking the water from the well of eternity directly will also face great risks. To solve this problem, we must measure the locations of all the extraordinary barbarians in the Great Wasteland, but without Gretel going into detail, Bernard knew that this was impossible. The Great Wasteland and Evergem Island are thousands of miles apart, separated by 2 oceans and a vast new continent. Even if distance was not considered, Gretel did not have the time to travel throughout the wilderness, nor did he have enough prestige to sample a large number of barbarians. Although barbarians are honest, they are also stubborn and very wary of things they cannot understand, especially things related to spellcasters. We can't blame them for being so stubborn. Barbarians who don't have this kind of vigilance are basically either dead or abducted by the entire tribe and disappeared without a trace. Boss, you don't need to say anything. Seeing Gretel hesitating and trying to find his words, Bernard interrupted him firmly. In order for me to advance safely and keep my future open, you have mobilized so many resources and done so much research. So far, you have maximized the success rate and minimized the risk. You have done this for me, but I still worry about the little risk and refuse to advance as you arranged. Am I still a human being? You are not a human being, you are a savage. Barbarians and humans are not the same species. Gretel really wanted to make such a joke, but looking at Bernard's focused and grateful eyes, he could only smile lightly. Now that you have decided, then, let's proceed as planned. It is said that according to the plan, Chromosome Greed has prepared 3 plans. For the first set, copy and paste directly according to the points of the elves. The second set removed those parts of the elf points that Gretel was most uncertain about, and instead selected and extended some of his ready-made extraordinary points. The third set does not follow the elves' points at all, but only extends the existing extraordinary points. Gretel held these 3 sets of plans, brought gifts, and respectfully visited Elder Harold. Under the starlight, when the elder saw Gretel, he couldn't help but yawned. "You're here again. Sorry, Elder, I have troubled you too many times during this period." Gretel was extremely embarrassed. Although the activation of prophecy does not always come at the cost of vitality and lifespan, it will always put considerable pressure on the prophecy. Of course, the main beneficiaries of this research are the elves themselves, which is why Elder Harold is willing to help them again and again. But this time, Gretel is making a prophecy for Bernard and has nothing to do with the elves. Besides swiping his face, he only had to swipe his face. "I promise this is the last time. I don't dare to ask you to use the prophecy spell. I just ask you to use your spiritual sense to know which of these 3 plans has the broadest future for Bernard." Elder Harold raised his eyelids and gave Bernard a faint look. Then, extending his hand to him, Gretel quickly pushed Bernard, asking him to bend forward and put his hands into the elder's hands. The elder closed his eyes, pressed Bernard's right hand with his right hand, and slid back and forth on the 3 plans. Suddenly he stretched out his hand, grabbed a portion, threw it out, then pressed Bernard's hand and continued touching. "Throw away one part, then throw away another part, and the remaining plan is self-evident." Greed held it back respectfully, and turned it over to see that it was the version where most of the points were marked with elves, and some of the original points were adjusted. He breathed a sigh of relief. After all, this plan is also the one he is most optimistic about. However, it would be interesting if this version could be successful. After even achieving the protection of prophecy, Gretel really had nothing to work towards. He arranged for Bernard to bathe and change clothes, adjust his condition, input the data himself, and check the magic circle 3 times from beginning to end to ensure that every part was operating smoothly, and finally placed the barbarian into the center of the magic circle. Relax your mind and body. Don't be too nervous. The better your condition, the greater the possibility of our success. Even if it doesn't go well, it doesn't matter. As long as you save your life, you still have a chance at Dragon Island. Boss, don't worry. Seeing that his boss has done so much research for him, Bernard's mentality has also changed, and it is no longer the same as before. "I won't let you down. Just try to control yourself, I can do it." He strode into the magic circle and sat down there with great strides, his hands clenched into fists and propped on his knees. Greed smiled at him, turned around and closed his eyes tightly, finally walked to the center of the circle and pushed the control switch hard. On the floor and on the wall of the tree cave, glistening green light lit up one by one along the magic circuits. Illidan held his breath and poured the pre-measured well of eternity water into the specific device. When I turned around, I saw a large group of people standing in the dark outside. "Great Elder Amat," Elder Fahim, Elder Melansila, Elder Masray, Elder Kareen, Elder Jalat, Elder Hyan, Elder Glen. The elven legends are not halfway through, at least a third of the way. In addition to these elders, there are also their disciples, apprentices, relatives and friends. When Greet entered the tree hole just now, Cyrilla was the only one standing outside, holding the little hand of Appa, who had transformed into a human form. At this moment, a large group of elves appeared out of nowhere and occupied half of the small square outside the tree hole. Elders, you. SHH. Elder Fahim smiled and raised a finger to signal him to be silent. Looking at Gretel through the tree hole, there is pride, joy, relief, and reluctance in his eyes. This time the experiment is completed, Gretel will probably leave. The relatives you should see have already been met, and you still have to move on. There is no need to keep them at your knees all year round. Everything you want to study has been thoroughly studied, and the rest can be studied slowly and spent bit by bit on the journey. The crisis on Yangju Island has been resolved, and the remaining tasks are not something he can intervene in. After Bernard's advancement is completed, the child will soon leave for Dragon Island. Wait, there is another step, that is, Gretel himself needs to advance to level 15. Where is this opportunity? He thought and observed. In the world tree, the boiling power of nature surged like a tide, and the water from the well of eternity began to continuously change the bodies of the barbarians. Bernard's tall body sometimes bent down, sometimes straightened up, sometimes waved his arms vigorously, and sometimes clenched his fists until they rattled. The muscles on the body bulged one by one, and then calmed down one by one. Veins are popping out on the arms, shoulders, and neck. If he were in a resting, recumbent position at this time, Gretel might describe the situation as jugular venous distension. Of course, the barbarian was currently exercising vigorously, so Gretel only had to pay attention to his vital signs. The heartbeat was very fast, but not to the level of atrial fibrillation or ventricular fibrillation. The blood pressure was also elevated, but not to the level of possible cerebral hemorrhage. Intense exercise will always cause harm to the human body, and it can be repaired later. It must go well, it must go well, it must go well. Barbarians are extremely physically strong and have a strong ability to withstand drastic changes. Although he has sex every day and sometimes drinks, he is young, his blood vessels are elastic, and his pulse pressure difference is quite large. It shouldn't be like a blood vessel bursting. Greed prayed silently, staring at the data that the magic circle kept flashing, and at the changes in Bernard's physical signs. Presiding over the advancement of his own people is completely different from presiding over the advancement of the elves who participated in the experiment. Gretel can find 10,000 reasons at any time to make himself nervous at every slightest change. After suffering like this for a full day and a half, Greed kept his eyes open and kept guard by the magic circle. Until the last drop of well water disappeared into the magic circle, until the last light of the magic circle was extinguished, Bernard looked up to the sky and roared, stood up suddenly, and rushed out of the tree hole. Seeing a lot of people blocking the door, he stamped his feet and his whole body shot up like fireworks. He jumped over the crowd, and then a series of explosions sounded in the forest. Boss! Boss, I have successfully advanced. Success! 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 Boss! The excited shouts went from low to high, from far to near. By the time Bernard came back covered in sweat and stood in front of the tree hole, half of the people in the square were gone. Bernard raised his head blankly and finally saw a few after-images running towards the top of the tree. What happened? He searched around and finally found an elf guard nearby, saluted and asked. The guard pointed to the top of his head with envy and sympathy. It seems like whoever wants to advance, they all go up. Bernard. No, the boss is going to advance again? After finishing my work and completing the project, you will advance, right? Thanks at I am as I will I doctor for the 100 starting coins reward. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1434. It happened just as Bernard expected. Gretel has completed the advancement of the barbarian followers, and this project is completely finished. I don't know how the will of the world is settled. In short, so many elves have advanced successfully without giving any feedback. It was only at this juncture that there were huge gifts. Greed stretched himself and felt his condition, and suddenly his expression changed. He hurriedly gave Sarala instructions, rushed into the tree hole, stretched out his arms, and stuck himself against the wall of the hole. Take me to a good place, to a safer place with more natural power. I feel like I'm about to advance. Then, Sarala, who was standing at the door of the tree hole, saw Gretel seeming to be submerged in the water, and like he was practicing wall penetration skills, he was immersed into the tree wall bit by bit. With a whoosh, it disappeared. Hey! Where have you been? Sarara stamped her foot. However, the Silver Dragon Girl's ability to communicate with animals is still a little bit good, especially for animals that can talk. She can always get the answer by pinching their necks and shaking them twice. The ability to communicate with plants is no better than nothing. Gretel didn't tell her where to go next. He only said, let World Tree find a good place for him. She wanted to pinch World Tree and shake it, but she couldn't shake it at all. Fortunately, the accident inside the tree hole has alarmed all the elf legends. Elder Mate walked over quickly, asked softly, and immediately put his hand against the cave wall. After communicating for a moment, he raised his head and smiled bitterly. He went to the top of the tree. The top of the World Tree. Just say a simple word, and World Tree will take him up directly. Although the Nature Walker's tree movement technique can be teleported from one tree to another, if the target is a wise ancient tree, the consent of the ancient tree must be obtained. These elders, these elven legends, these children who are favored by nature, and even the elders who have taken care of and protected the World Tree for many years, do not have this face in front of the World Tree. Unless it is a very urgent situation, you can only fly for a while and then use the teleportation array. I'll take you up. He held out his hand to Sarala. Behind him, Elder Fahim also extended his hand to Appa. The elders flew up one after another and ran towards the nearest teleportation array. As for the younger elves, they had no choice but to fly up by themselves, or run along the branches. Watch! Watch! Although it is only level 14 that advances to level 15, Gretel makes a lot of noise every time he advances, and what if he has some insights? More importantly, we must protect him and ensure his safety. A huge amount of world gifts are falling down, and there is no guarantee that some monsters will not be robbed. The elders and high-level spellcasters found reasons for themselves and went to watch. Some were particularly unlucky and did not even have the opportunity to watch, such as Kusa Oak, who was named by his teacher. Go and inform His Excellency the Lord of Thunder, and then inform His Excellency the Crown of the Sun. Their disciples and junior brothers are about to advance. Although they may feel it, we have to send someone to tell them. By the way. The old man frowned, a knot of disgust forming between his brows. After enduring it for a while, he still added. The Archmage Heinz should also inform you, you can't just ignore it. Even if Kusa Oak had a million unwillingnesses, he could only be ordered to run errands at this time. After running around for a while, I rushed back to the top of the World Tree. I saw that the top of the tree was empty. Only Greed was sitting upright, but there were a circle of people flying around. The nearest one was floating 1 kilometer away. How is it going? SHH, don't talk, look at the sky. Kusaok followed his directions and looked up. As soon as he raised his head, he let out a soft hiss. On the top of the sky, a world tree made of clouds hung down. The crown of the cloud world tree has spread out, covering the real world tree. Even the place where they are floating is under the cover of the crown. However, the part under the clouds is not dark. On the contrary, it is a torrent of light from the stars, falling from the sky and illuminating everything. It illuminates their faces, illuminates the branches and leaves at the highest point of the world tree, illuminates the birds flying around the clouds of the world tree, and naturally, also illuminates Gretel's eyes, which are slightly closed, sitting in the center of the tree top. How much energy does this require? Kusaok raises his head 90 degrees, 100 degrees, and tilts the waist back. He almost bent himself into a lowered posture before he saw the edge of the Yunkai tree trunk. With so much energy poured into it, is he going to rush directly to legend? Rushing to legend is obviously impossible. In fact, although this cloud world tree looks large in scale, it is mainly because it stirs up the flowing clouds in the sky, and the actual energy contained in it is not too much. At least, it's not to the point where Gretel will burst if poured in one breath. Gretel even had room to expand his mental power, floating upward with the will of the world, and looking down from a distance. The northern and southern islands of Yeongju Island are connected by a rainbow. Looking down from a high place, the island is filled with rich natural atmosphere, like a thin layer of green mist covering the whole island. The angle of view continues to rise, and Yeongju Island gradually shrinks, turning into a small green dot floating on the blue sea. Around the island, there are turbulent winds and atmospheric circulation. Forming a seemingly void but extremely tough barrier, it protects the entire world and resists various external attacks. Meteors one after another, bright spots, hit the barrier, but were burned up quietly in the barrier. Even, this barrier actively attracts, swallows, and absorbs external forces, integrating them into the foundation of this world. However, no matter how powerful the barrier is, there are things that cannot be swallowed or digested. On the edge of Everlasting Island, in the dark underground, there is a deep, filthy, powerful existence, imaginary and real, adhering to the outside of the barrier, and even biting a hole in the barrier. In the mouth, blazing lightning and raging flames were boiling, constantly clashing with the filth inside that being. The remaining ashes after the confrontation were rolled out by the airflow and fell on the barrier, thickening the barrier layer after layer. Around the big rift, the power of Yeongju Island, and even the entire world, was also slowly increasing. Greet's eyes suddenly turned, and he followed the direction pointed by the will of the world and looked from a distance. Outside the barrier, and even in the thinner areas within the barrier, there are many such small worlds floating looming. Some are big, some are small, some are strong, some are fragile. Some come and go, some are steadfast. Some are completely silent, slowly being absorbed and swallowed by the world, becoming part of the larger world. Some are in tune with the entire world, exhaling breath from each other, constantly communicating and achieving mutual success. There are also some small worlds that protrude outside the barrier of the big world. Like the big world, they strive to seize and attract external forces to strengthen themselves. There are also some small worlds, like the one around Yeongju Island, that have been fiercely rejected by the entire world and are currently fighting fiercely. It turns out, if you want to go further up, are these what you need? If you contribute to this world and bring growth to this world, you will get feedback from the world and you will be able to go further and further. Greet looked at it carefully. Other spellcasters may not be able to get this information until they are close to the legend, or even step into the gate of the legend. Otherwise, you have to have a legendary teacher who can teach you by word of mouth and heart. So this is why, with a legendary teacher, the possibility of one's advancement is greatly increased. Without the guidance of a legend, it would be too difficult for one to find the right direction. Just as he was thinking this, his eyes darkened and his vision dropped rapidly. Gretel knew that the amount of information given by the world's will this time ended here. Next, it's time for him to advance. A vast amount of the world's gifts pour into the body. Many times before, Gretel has strengthened his meditation core with gifts from the world, and strengthened it again. The first time is to strengthen the level of organs and tissues, and the second time is to strengthen the level of cells. What should we do now? Do you want me to strengthen it to the molecular or even atomic level? Neither can I. I really don't know how to do it. For any protein, what does it look like at the molecular level? What is its molecular formula? How is it stacked up in 3 dimensions? I have no idea. But the gifts of the world cannot be wasted. Greet, who was in a hurry and sought medical treatment, gritted his teeth and simply broke the jar and threw it. Isn't it just chromosomes? Wouldn't it be possible to provide a large amount of energy to transform the chromosome points into extraordinary beings? I have tested my own chromosomes myself. Not only did I test it, I also memorized it, or in other words, stored it in the core of meditation. Right now, I retrieved the stored information, pasted it point by point, and used the world's gifts to mold it into an extraordinary form. Maybe it would be useful for my own advancement? Just do what comes to mind. Gretel concentrated his mental power and worked hard to mobilize the information stored in the core of meditation. Then, he directed the mighty power that washed down to flow, condense, and blend into a certain point that he had studied that was shared by high-level elves and high-level humans. Influence me. Give me a shock. Wash me over and over again, try to influence me, and give me extraordinary speed at that point. He closed his eyes tightly and sat quietly on the top of the world tree, not noticing the wind and clouds surging around him. However, the legends and other elves suspended around the world tree, waiting to watch the excitement, all opened their eyes. What is this? The world tree is deforming. In other words, the cloud world tree is deforming. Distortion, condensation, change, entanglement. Soon, it turned from a tree reaching to the sky into a mess, from a mess, it turned into a twisted twist. What is this boy Greet doing? Under the clouds, the Lord of Thunder took a look and frowned tightly. Does he want the whole world to know what his own chromosomes look like? Thanks to @Dingzinchen, @Single traveling for the 100 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1435. The mighty giant chromosomes, or in other words, the giant double helix structure, hang high in the sky. There was a slight ripple below, covering Gretel, and above, there was an elf elder who was really curious and turned into a peregrine falcon and soared into the sky. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour. He flew down exhausted, changed back to his elf form, and shook his head helplessly. This is too high, I can't see it at all. If Gretel knew that he was flying so high just to see the whole chromosome chain, he would definitely advise him not to bother. How many base pairs are there in human chromosomes? The answer Gretel memorized in his previous life was about 3 billion. Gretel has been lazy in this life, he has never considered running electrophoresis. Even if he starts running electrophoresis, it is not possible to measure how many base pairs there are immediately. As for how many genomes there are in human chromosomes, do all base pairs belong to a certain genome, this, that? Anyway, the strings of alternating light and dark strips that Greet measured are definitely more than tens of thousands, but they are still very far away from 3 billion. At this moment, the bright and dark, tangled double helix structure on the clouds also extended from the top of his head to the endless sky, no matter how high or far it was. A group of elven legends, high-level elves, as well as the Lord of Thunder and Baebo, looked up at the chromosome. Looking at the chromosomes, one section is bright and the other is dark, and there are dots of golden light embedded in them. And gradually, a small group of clouds that were originally white began to be dyed with a faint golden color. The golden color is getting brighter and brighter, occasionally stagnating, occasionally dimming a little, and then continuing to become brighter. This speed is too slow. The Lord of Thunder frowned. He felt that his feet were sore from standing, and then he saw one cloud completely turn into gold, and the second white cloud gradually lit up. To advance once, how many points must be lit? How long can Gretel's advancement last, and how long can it take to strengthen itself? With his efficiency, how many points can be lit by the time this advancement is completed? He won't be too late, right? No, chromosomes should not be exposed to the public in the first place. This should be every spellcaster's deepest secret. If others see it, God knows what kind of methods they will use to deal with them. While thinking about it, he turned his head and glanced at Archmage Heinz next to him, frowning slightly. Among everyone present, the one who is most likely to use chromosomes is the necromancer. He really shouldn't be allowed to come today. No, it's not that he shouldn't have been allowed to come, he shouldn't have been allowed to land on the island before. Little Gretel is good at everything, but she is too soft-hearted. I don't know if it's too late to throw him out now. Archmage Heinz did not notice the Lord of Thunder's gaze at all. He raised his head and looked at the huge chromosomes in the sky, his face full of enthusiasm. That's it? That's it? In the process of advancement, people can guide their strength, strengthen their own chromosomes, and strengthen those chromosome points that are more helpful to them, which can greatly increase the success rate of advancement. Thanks to the Plague Lord for the demonstration. To pass this news back, every necromancer in the future, at least every high-level necromancer, must take a test and memorize their chromosomes. By the way, the work of studying chromosomes cannot stop. In addition to studying the dead people, we also need to study the living people. We must study carefully which points can enhance a person's basic physical fitness, which points can improve mental strength, and which points can light up skills. These must be studied carefully. Don't be afraid of big investments or high costs. After researching these secrets, you can understand them. They are inexhaustible wealth for the entire Black Crow Swamp. The cloud chromosomes hang high in the sky, and are dyed golden bit by bit. The red sun gradually set towards the west, but the golden light on the chromosomes lit up one by one, illuminating the sky under the clouds. There were more and more golden lights, extending higher and higher. By nightfall, it was already like a colorful golden cloud pillar, standing high in the sky. Not to mention the Lord of Thunder and the others who were standing 1 kilometer away, even if they were on the South Island, they could see the shining cloud pillars when they raised their heads. Opposite Hongqiao, on the top of the snow peak, you can see a few small dots rising up, looking from a distance. The Lord of Thunder sighed, wishing he could drive all these guys away, or raise a cloud of mist to cover the entire cloud pillar. However, there are always more than a dozen legends present in Lin Lin. Even if he is a third-level legend, he cannot be driven away casually. As for covering the entire cloud pillar, looking at the cloud pillar that reaches the sky and the earth, when he advanced to the third level of legend, he would probably only reach that high. He is still unable to raise such high clouds and mist. Or cover up part of it first. It's better not to do it. Some things are better off if you don't do them. The more you do them, the more people will notice them and the more troublesome things will become. The Lord of Thunder frowned in annoyance. Before he could make up his mind, the cloud pillar suddenly spread out, and the double helix formed by the cloud beads turned into a blurry cloud. For a moment, there were high and low exclamations amidst the whistling wind in the sky. What happens? Has the advancement been completed? Or something went wrong? How is little Gretel? Is everything going well? Countless eyes were focused on the top of the tree. Sarala moved her body and turned into a stream of silver light, rushing straight over. Burbo beside her didn't hold back, With the legendary physical strength of mankind, he couldn't pull a humanoid silver dragon back, but he saw that she had already rushed to Gretel's side. When he rushed out, he was still in human form. When he rushed to the destination, he was already in the form of a silver dragon, slowly lying down on the top of the world tree. The slender neck and tail were coiled into a ball, surrounding Gretel in the middle. "Okay, now I can't see you at all," Verbo whispered to the teacher. The Lord of Thunder snorted softly, pretending not to hear or see anything, and looked up at the cloud pillar. The cloud pillar did not live up to his expectations. It rolled up and down for a while, and then gradually began to condense, showing the shape of a double helix. "Isn't this back to square one? You didn't see clearly. The order of the dots is different, and the golden part is missing. I heard that we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. Could it be that we changed one and started dyeing it, right? Is this brat finished? Does he really want to publicize all his chromosomes to the legends of Everlasting Island?" The Lord of Thunder was slightly annoyed. Fortunately, the cloud pillar stopped changing after 3 or 4 rounds, and completely collapsed. It turned into a huge cloud tent, wrapping Greet inside. It's soft, yet thick and dense. It has a powerful force that blocks all detection from the outside world. Even with the eyes of the legends, Greet cannot be seen inside, only the tip of his shining silver tail can be seen occasionally dangling out. Hey, the tip of the tail can still sway and swing from side to side. Probably, maybe, Gretel's condition is not bad. Gretel's situation is indeed good. Although changing one's own chromosomes is not something that can be done overnight, it is already a pretty good achievement to change 4 chromosomes in one step. As for the pasted points, can they be extended to the whole body in the future? I don't know, I'll have to look at it after I advance. Anyway, I have a ready-made microscope and it's not difficult to do a test. At least what he couldn't do last time, he can do it this time. Last time, he wanted to change his chromosomes in his mind, but the will of the world ignored him at all. Maybe it's because last time, he didn't manifest the magic circle that locked and changed chromosomes in the meditation world. Anyway, this time he did it, and got 4 strips of it. The next task is, that is. Before he could figure it out, the world of meditation had already begun another round of changes. This time, various strips and spots of light appeared around him. There are 4 tangled together, there are 6 or 8 tangled together, there are more than 10 or 20 tangled together, and there are hundreds of them tangled together. Some are tightly entangled at the end, some are slightly spread out, some are disassembled and reassembled, one is hanging alone, and the other is pieced together like bricks and tiles to build a wall, based on this one piece by piece. Plant chromosomes, animal chromosomes, bacterial chromosomes, chromosomes that normally exist in cells, chromosomes that are undergoing exchange and replication, and chromosomes that are undergoing evolutionary variation. There is also golden light, black light, and light of unknown strange colors, rising and shrinking, beating slightly. As the light spots flicker, the surrounding extraordinary power also fluctuates. Is this the secret of extraordinary power that makes this world different from the world he came from? Written in the deepest part of the human body, the way to resonate with the world? Greet stared silently at these flickering points of light with joy. In the past, if he wanted to treat patients, he could only rely on a scalpel and a healing technique to cut, and heal. Now, he can study the patient's chromosomes and modify them at the genetic level. Of course, major changes are still not possible, and a large amount of research must be the basis. However, genetic collapse or something like that can already be saved. Is this your understanding of the world? Is this, as you understand, the way this world exists and changes? There seemed to be a voice in the dark, asking Gretel this question. Gretel closed his eyes slightly and answered in his heart. Yes, yes. This is what I have seen, what I have researched and confirmed, and what I understand about the world. It is not complete, and it still needs to be deepened. However, at this stage, I can only do this. One step. Quietly, the thick cloud surrounding Gretel began to change. Flow, condense, and various patterns appear on the surface. Teacher, he started. Verbo took a step toward the teacher. The voice was very low, like a whisper, as if he was afraid that the louder voice would disturb Greet's progress. His meditation world has begun to materialize, but why is it so big? Thanks to @bookfriend 2019090719431371 for the 500 starting coin reward.